Welcome everyone, I'm Rhonda from HR.com and it's so great to have you join us today for the webcast, How to Boost Your Team's Productivity by 35%. And it is sponsored by our great friends at Capacity. And today from Capacity, we will have with us Justin Schmidt and Kyle Hubert. So if you have questions during the webcast, please click Q&A in your webinar controls and type your questions there. Once the presentation has begun, I'm going to post a couple of links in the chat area. One will prompt an exit survey to open in a new tab on your computer, and another will be where you can access the slides for the presentation today. Okay, yeah, please be sure to complete that survey whenever the webcast is finished. And it is now my absolute pleasure to turn it over to Justin and Kyle.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I'm Justin, the VP of Marketing here at Capacity, and I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Kyle, who's one of our account executives. So we're going to talk about boosting productivity by 35%. And we're going to look at this through the lens of AI and then, more specifically, the Capacity solution. So to start here, I always want to take a moment and thank HR.com. We've been working with HR.com for several years now, and it's been a great partnership. They have a ton of awesome resources for HR professionals, as you all well know. And this is a partnership that we've spent a lot of time evolving and working with. And one of the results of this is, we just recently partnered with HR.com to launch a free coronavirus and COVID-19 chatbot. So basically, we took information from the World Health Organization, CDC, and all these expert places. HR.com provided some domain knowledge around policies and sort of company procedures and stuff. And we put that all into a knowledge base, accessible via chat. And it's free to download. If you've ever, simple as just installing a little piece of JavaScript on a website, so you can put it in your intranet or on a web page and have a free chatbot available. So we'll send out a link to this after the webinar, but it's also available on HR.com. So let's talk about our agenda for today. Really, we're going to cover four things. We're going to cover improving the employee experience. We're going to cover optimizing the onboarding process for new employees. We're going to offer quick and reliable answers to employee common questions. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our day today on a demo and some Q&A. I'm going to keep my presentation brief, so Kyle has ample time to show a platform and answer questions. So let's dive right in. Improving the employee experience. So, due to COVID-19 and what's going on, a lot of employees are working from home. So what were once collaborative teams are now stuck in home offices. And it's important more than ever for HR and company leadership to make sure they're doing everything they can to improve employee experience during these uncertain times. So let's talk about how AI can help. So we did a study with HR.com, I think it was last summer. It was called the State of the Industry Research Report. And one of the questions was, name 5 functions where HR is going to see the greatest potential in AI for the next few years. And, the most commonly chosen option here was analytics and metrics. But when I look at those other 4 buckets, talent acquisition, learning and development, comp, and performance management, there are aspects of those that I think you can bucket the whole thing together and look at the portions of those 4 areas that have a lot of repetitive tasks. This is all a larger bucket that can be automated. And by automating those tasks, you're basically freeing up people to do more higher level work, and you're also, it's through that you gain those operational savings, therefore increasing productivity by 35%. So specifically, let's look at some numbers here. So Information Age put out an article. They did a study and found that 90% of workers are burdened with boring and repetitive tasks. So we look at this as kind of a treadmill where every day you've got the same 3 or 4 things that you have to do that, doesn't really take a lot of brain power, so to speak, but still has to get done, right? And this is where we believe the concept of support automation can help ease the burden of that treadmill and free up your team. So, when you remove the burden of this and you free up that brain space, for lack of a better word, with higher level thinking, you can spend time on things like defining your policies, or really looking in at development and learning and coaching, all the stuff that sort of makes a workplace better, and AI can help free up the time for that. So how much time is actually being spent on the treadmill? So there's a study that was done a few years ago. Economic Times is the publisher we usually cite for this, but if you look around, you can see it in a bunch of places. But roughly 1/3 of a team member's day is spent doing administrative stuff. So searching for information, doing these repetitive tasks. So that means, let's just do real simple math here. If roughly 100% of your team is spending time on some time on repetitive tasks, and 35% of that time, you effectively get, for every 3 employees, you'd sort of lose 1, right, to this treadmill of repetition. So you get this sort of death by 1,000 cuts scenario where, and it happens to all of us, where you're in the middle of something and then a simple question comes in, or you're in the middle of something and you have to stop to, complete some paperwork of some sort, right? This stuff all adds up. And, you can create a better employee experience by providing that sort of 24/7, 365 tier 0 support. So when you think of this, AI can effectively turn into the de facto source for some information. So instead of HR or IT getting interrupted with repetitive questions and simple tasks, AI can stand in front of that and sort of offer this gatekeeper, if you will, to, it's only the meaningful stuff that gets through, right? So one specific example of this is shortening the onboarding process. So as you know, onboarding employees is a time-consuming endeavor. Before the employee starts, the HR team needs to coordinate with the hiring manager on a start date and orientation date. Ops team needs to get the employer's computer set up. And when the team member finally starts, they meet with HR, fill out a ton of paperwork, enroll in health insurance, set up 401k, et cetera, et cetera. So really what we're looking at here is a process and a system, right? And processes and systems are a great thing for artificial intelligence to automate, right? So when we think about this, if you have a system and you have a repetitive process, you can analyze the parts of that process that are sort of the most repetitive, the most the easiest to distill into a single piece that can be automated. And we created a workbook to help guide you through this. And effectively, what we're looking at here is understanding the process, defining the system, and managing the feedback loop. I did a webinar with HR.com a few months ago, actually, kind of talking about this in detail. So here's a simple example. The intake of information that goes into a HRIS, for example. It's the same question for it's the same 10 questions or whatever for every person that's hired, first, last name, social security number, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, that is a part of the onboarding process. When you actually write it down and go through it, you're like, okay, this is the same thing over and over and over again. Let's leverage AI to intake that information. So now instead of employees sitting down and filling out a form, they can just have a conversation with a chatbot that takes that information and writes it to a database somewhere, right? And any hiccups in the process or knowing exactly how long that process took, that gives you data for a feedback loop that you can then manage and then go back in and further sort of tweak the knobs and get better results, right? So we'll send out a link to this workbook after the webinar, but again, it's helpful to think of AI being really good at doing repetitive work, right? Which and then automating parts of a process. So going through and mapping out your process makes that a lot easier. So finally, this idea of offering quick and reliable answers to employees' questions. So even after the onboarding process is over, employees still have questions, right? And this is where the sort of the 35% of time that we talked about earlier really kind of gets into sharper focus. So this is where we come up with this concept of level 0 support, right? And AI being used as your very own personal assistant, right? So think of, as a sort of paradigmatic use case here. 6 months in the job, employees are still going to have questions that pop up and they're not sure how to answer. So instead of shoulder tapping a coworker or reaching out to HR or IT for the answer, you have, AI can sit in front of this, right? We look at this as knowledge exists in sort of 3 places: apps, docs, and people. Or you've got your applications such as, let's say, Salesforce if you're on the sales team, or a intranet SharePoint instance where you've got a bunch of documents stored, or a Google Cloud Drive or something like that. But then you've also got all the information that's just sort of unique to your culture and your team. And we can take that knowledge, put it into the system, and then that knowledge is then accessible via chat for employees to come in and ask those questions, right? So now the very simple, and this happens to even me in marketing, where someone will say, hey, where's the such and such report? I have to stop what I'm doing. I have to go grab the link, copy, paste, hit send, right? In a world where you've got effectively an Alexa or a Siri for the workplace to help you, all those questions then come to the AI versus the employee, and you realize some of those benefits, right? So all in all, this leads to a roughly 40% increase in productivity. Accenture did this study that, this is the expected benefit from implementing AI in the workplace. And, we've seen that across a lot of our client base, whether it's small businesses with a lot of customer questions, or large enterprises with thousands of employees with internal questions. In any event, the access to this information and the ability to automate these simple processes has really opened a lot of doors. So when we think of the key takeaways from today, one is improve the employee experience by freeing up your team for higher level work. 2 is to optimize the onboarding process for new employees by automating processes. And then offer quick and reliable answers to employee common questions through an AI conversational chatbot. So that it concludes my portion of this. I'm going to pass the baton over to Kyle to discuss the product in more detail and walk through some of the features of Capacity. I'm going to hit stop share here, and Kyle's going to pick it up.
All right, thanks so much, Justin. I'll go ahead and pop on my screen here. Let me know if everybody can see it. Looks like it's coming through okay, and I'll pick up where Justin left off. So as Justin mentioned, my name is Kyle Hubert. I'm an account executive on the Capacity sales team. I sit at our headquarters in St. Louis, and thought it would be beneficial to sort of illustrate in a little bit more detail some of the live examples and capabilities of our platform live and in action. Before doing so, Wanted to walk you through the upcoming slide that I think does a really excellent job of illustrating our platform's architecture, especially as it relates to our core product offerings, and really gives you a feel for what that user experience and that user journey can look like. So this is what we call our bird's eye view slide. It breaks just about every rule of PowerPoint with the busyness, but again, I think it'll do a great job of laying the groundwork for what our platform can do. So to kick things off, the entire experience starts with your user. And so this can be either an internal team member or an external customer, an external user coming to your website. But that individual starts by submitting their question to Capacity via either our web concierge, more traditionally thought of as a chatbot, or a messaging platform that's heavily leveraged across an organization, such as your Microsoft Teams, your Slacks, your Skype for Businesses, among others. But regardless, the user submits their question. Capacity then takes that question using our platform's neural network, which consists of about 40 plus proprietary and open source algorithms. We look for a response to match it in the knowledge base. And so this is where the Capacity search functionality, as well as the true natural language processing and machine learning piece of what we do, really starts to come into play. And I'll delve a little bit deeper into that as we go along. But starting things off with our knowledge base, and this is truly the self-service component of what we do. And one thing I really want to illustrate, whereas a lot of service desk, help desk type solutions focus on ticket remediation and managing tickets, we try to focus on deflecting that ticket. And so with our knowledge base, we capture FAQs, which is really, you can think of it as a series of folders and directories where you add and maintain all of those common questions that might be hitting your HR team on a regular basis, and that you want to make available for your internal or external users. Broken down in a Q&A format, very simple to add exchanges into the knowledge base. And this is sort of our first line of defense when we're looking for a match for a user who asks a question. Next, we have our Capacity Cloud Drive that allows you to upload any of your key files and documents directly into our knowledge base. And so the main takeaway is the additional functionality that you'll receive by utilizing and uploading straight to our cloud drive. So what we can do is we can take those heavily leveraged documents that are used and referenced all the time. We can automatically index relevant content based on the inquiry that we receive. And we can also provide a response, as well as even a direct link to the document, as well as the individual page number that content resides on. And that's all available within our chat interface, and something that I'll showcase on the upcoming live examples. Coming very soon is going to be our article functionality and our article feature of the knowledge base module. What this will allow you to do is both author and publish knowledge articles directly in the knowledge base to avoid the cumbersome task of trying to produce that on your own. It'll be very simple, and you'll also get the same Q&A functionality that I mentioned with Cloud Drive to be able to inquiry against articles. So as previously mentioned, the knowledge base is where capacity search capabilities, natural language processing, machine learning really spring into action. And so the NLP allows us to understand intent, sentence fragments, misspellings, acronyms, and so on. So I always frame it up as if you can text a friend or instant message a colleague in your office, you can absolutely use our platform and use Capacity to its fullest capabilities. And so this is a key differentiator for us, as our match rate is typically at the top of industry standards. We look to be matching north of the 90th percentile by the time we go live. The machine learning is really what adds variance and understands that no people ask questions the exact same way. And lastly, like I said, the capacity search functionality is what jumpstarts the progression of searching for a match. So progressing from FAQs to the cloud drive, potentially even an external cloud drive can be hooked up via integrations, and we can search there. And same with articles once that feature is ready and built out. But the beauty of Capacity in that fallback search is that it avoids clogging the knowledge base with just thousands and thousands of exchanges, some of which are only referenced or used, once a year. And it responds back with that featured snippet doc live and in real time. So you're not caching or having to store the Q&A pairs that get really difficult to manage. And so I know that's a lot of information, but again, think of this as the true self-service piece of what we do. So moving forward, we always get the question, what happens if Capacity is unable to match to an appropriate response? That's when the user has the option to create a ticket in our help desk module. And so first what we do is we, if the knowledge base and the FAQs, the document search didn't yield any appropriate results, is we kick off a guided conversation. And the goal here is to collect additional information from the user to help guide that user down a decision path that ideally will guide them to an already existing exchange in the knowledge base, deflecting and avoiding the need to create that ticket in the very first place. If the guided conversation doesn't get the job done and resolve the question, that's when it can be flagged in our help desk as a ticket. The user can self-select to file a ticket. And that's when your internal subject matter experts, or what we call co-pilots, can go to track and manage tickets, as well as curate the knowledge associated with that unanswered question. If your preference is to avoid ticket queues and you would like to resolve your user's issue in real time, we have our live chat feature that allows you to loop in a live agent with that user in real time to get that problem resolved immediately. The nice thing about both of these features that I do want to quickly highlight is that, whether you go the ticket route or the live chat route, that answer can be added to the knowledge base, again, so that your support team is never having to answer the same question over and over again. And anytime a user comes back to capacity with the same question, they'll be given that response. Another quick feature that I want to briefly touch on is what we call our clarifiers, essentially asking, a user, if we're sort of in between a match, we'll ask, did you mean this? Did you mean that? To help direct the users, again, back to something that lives in the knowledge base to avoid a ticket needing to be created in the first place. One thing that I know Justin mentioned, and this is really a good job at providing that high level of our core product offerings, we do have the ability to tie in to various applications via either an integration that we build out, or we have a developer platform that would give your internal team the keys to sort of unlock the functionality within apps. That again would all kind of function up here before having to create a ticket. And so just wanted to briefly touch on that. We have workflows that we can build out as well that I'll briefly showcase. So moving forward, I'm going to hop out of this screen for a moment and showcase a few quick things product related as far as the interface that I mentioned. So, we talked about the ability to deploy on any number of chat interfaces. So, on an external site, we can look like this. On an intranet site, internal for your team, we can look like this. And I also mentioned messaging platforms. Again, we've tied into Slack, Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business. There's users with Cisco Jabber, RingCentral, among others. So fully possible there, provided that the user adoption is there and folks are utilizing the chat platform. But thought it would be cool to kind of jump out of just presentation mode and maybe show you our platform live and in action. So I'll kick things off and I'll say hi to I'll say hi to Capacity. Capacity is typically pretty friendly, typically says, hey, hi, or hello. If I say hi again, Capacity is going to respond back with, you just said that. And the reason that I highlight that is just to show you that it's not a static bot or a parrot. It's truly, conversationally aware. There's context, it's tracking the conversation. Jumping into some HR specific stuff, and I'll kind of go piece by piece with some of the product offerings and sort of the different modules that I had mentioned in the bird's eye view slide previously. So I could say something simple like, what are our company holidays? I know this tends to hit HR desk on a very regular basis. This is going to be a quick example of something that's built out as an FAQ. We know we're receiving this question on a regular basis. We build out the response in the knowledge base so that we get a very quick, short answer. And again, just to show you that we don't have to frame things up, solely as a question, I can enter a keyword like dress code. If I'm a new employee, I don't know what to wear on my first day of work. Maybe things are changing. Capacity is going to give me a quick snippet on what to wear. And this is actually our internal instance. So this is what I would wear in the office if I was a new employee at Capacity. If I wanted to take things a step further, again, this is sort of the next area I feel like HR gets a ton of questions, is going to be a benefit summary. So this is an example of linking directly to documents. And so I've got all of the available documents that a Capacity user would need. I could click on any one of these just to show you that that is in fact live. And I'm taking to our G Drive. I have all the documents right at my fingertips without having to search, without having to stop anybody's productivity, give them a call, email them, slow down their day. I can get off to the races. And if I do have a question, I do have a point contact person, so I'm not having to call a support desk or wait on hold. 401k is another area, like I said, that we get a ton, from our HR customers, we hear a lot of questions related to. And so this is what I mentioned with a clarifier. So it can ask, did you mean? It might take a minute. Like I said, it's going to get back to me. It's searching for anything within our system that is going to be 401k related. Give me just 1 second here. Alrighty. Let me make sure my internet connection is okay. But moving on past that, like I said, it looked like, let me try that one more time. Here we go. I was going to say, sorry about that. I must have had an internet glitch for a moment. So if I'm a new team member and I'm enrolled in a plan and want to make changes, like I said, I get a link to our provider's website. If I have questions about the current plan, I know who to contact at that organization. And I can also click here to view any of the notes associated with that as well. So again, quick links is the idea, not having to slow down my day to search for information and not having to stop anybody else within my organization's productivity with a very simple question. Jumping out of some of the basic, just FAQs, and again, linking to documents. I kind of mentioned earlier the ability to index information. So if for whatever reason I want information on Cobra, this is where our capacity cloud drive functionality will really kick in. And so if you upload our employee handbook, I can then see in the capacity team handbook, it's on page 39. That's where all the information resides as it relates to Cobra. So I'm getting a link to the document. I'm getting a short snippet. I'm also being taken directly to the page 39, where all the Cobra information lives. So again, that negates the need for me to have to search through my drive, trying to find the exact title of the document. It negates the need to scroll through pages and pages when I really just want to get quick information on Cobra. So that's a quick capacity cloud drive example. Jumping into some of the integrations with HRIS systems, I could say something simple like PTO balance. I'm getting ready to take a vacation. If that's the case, I want to know, how many days I can book for my trip. So capacity then, it knows who I am. I'm authenticated in the system. We use Zenefits. And so it pings Zenefits on my behalf to pick up my PTO balance. Now, I mentioned the ability for capacities, machine learning and natural language processing to understand and pick up on different ways of phrasing questions, as well as spelling errors, grammatical errors, differences there between individuals and users who might ask those questions. So if I said something crazy, like how many vacation days do I got? And again, I probably shouldn't be working at capacity or any organization if this is how I spell. But what I want to showcase is it's still going to go to Zenefits. It's going to pick up on the keywords. It's going to see through those spelling errors, and it's still going to provide the exact same results. Moving forward, I know, and it looks like I've got some chats here, so I'll take a quick peek. And I'll be sure to get to all these questions, like I said, by the end. So I appreciate it. Keep them coming in. I will definitely check back towards the end of the presentation. I know Justin had mentioned onboarding and how we can assist there. So there's a variety of ways, short of just being able to provide, a ton of information for those new team members that are joining organizations. I also want to showcase how we can be leveraged internally for a team, for an HR team, for example, that wants to kind of add efficiencies to their onboarding process. So I could provide a command to capacity. I want to onboard, let's say, a new employee. And so this is the workflow functionality. So it's going to kick off a guided conversation to capture a little bit more information. We're getting ready to hire summer interns, so I'll go this route. So it's going to ask me what type of employee. It's going to ask if I'm the hiring manager. And this is where we get into permissions and controls. If I were to click no, it would stop the conversation and tell me I don't have access to move forward. I sit in St. Louis, so I'll just arbitrarily choose our St. Louis office as the location. And so it's going to kick off an onboarding workflow. And so this is where we can jump in to our platform and you can get a real feel for all the functionality that we'd be able to offer somebody. Just made up the name Amy Anderson, but start workflow, sending offer letters, all the software provisioning, all the welcoming type of stuff, team lunches. We've got benefits, team member handbook, doing one-on-ones with manager, first day email. And it basically gives me a checklist that I can work through to ensure that I am checking all the boxes, hitting every step to make sure that Amy has a great, onboarding experience and a positive, kind of first 90 days within a new organization. A couple quick things I wanted to showcase that are a little bit more general across any company that we might work with, not necessarily HR specific. This is especially relevant given the difficult times that we find ourselves in with the vast majority of the workforce working remotely. It's just something simple like connect to the VPN. And so again, I think our ops team is probably getting hit with this on a regular basis. I'm sure it's probably the same for your IT or operations teams, but again, I can jump in very quickly and I've got a step-by-step guide to connecting to our open VPN. Let's say, we've got a variety of calendaring, email, drive, and file type skills. I mentioned external knowledge bases or repositories. So I could say something, simple like search my files for MBA leads. So this is a conference that we recently attended. I know I've got some documents on my G Drive related to the Mortgage Bankers Association leads list. And so searched the G Drive on my behalf, came up with a couple of documents. And let's say I want to discuss that with a coworker. Since Justin's on this call and he's going to know this is just an example, I'll say forward that to Justin. And so now it's jumping into Gmail on my behalf. And again, we can do this with the G Suite, Microsoft O365. But what it's going to do is going to send an email from me to Justin, and it's going to copy those documents that I wanted to share with him. Let's say, hey, that's not enough. I don't just want to share these documents with Justin. I want to schedule a meeting with Justin just to go over this in greater detail. So I could say schedule 15 minutes with Justin. And now we're jumping into some of the calendaring skills. So what Capacity is going to do is it's going to compare my calendar to Justin's calendar and give you the next 5 times that we're available. I'll go ahead and choose today at 11 a.m. And what it's going to do from there is it's going to go ahead and create an actual meeting on my calendar for Justin and I to sit down and meet. So pretty neat functionality there. One thing I can briefly do, and I'll do a quick time check to make sure we've got plenty of time for questions, is give you a little bit better feel of what the inner workings of our platform look like. So I'll ask for a link to our Copilot console, and this is sort of where you can manage, just about all aspects of our platform offering, the different modules associated, so on and so forth. I know that our engineering team is always hard at work, so I'll jump into a demo instance to ensure that I don't upset any of their efforts. But this right here is where you can kind of go and manage all the different exchanges. So I mentioned folders, I mentioned directories inside those folders, and then all the associated exchanges. So I'll jump on 401k, for example. These are all the different exchanges within the knowledge base that are related to 401k under the HR directory, or excuse me, under the HR folder. And so I can click into here. Before I do that, I'll highlight a couple of quick things. I mentioned access control. So this dictates who within your organization can see what. This is where you go to control all that. So if I've got, pertinent financial information or salary related information that I only want senior leadership to be able to access, I can control that here. If I want more general information to be available to the whole HR organization or even the company as a whole, I can control and dictate all that here. Manually adding stuff is as simple as when someone says this, Capacity responds with that. Very simple. You add it to the exchange and you're off to the races. If you click into the actual, let's choose, 401k eligibility requirements. If I click into that exchange, so I see all the different ways that people can ask the same question, but still get pointed to the same response. So we pick up on all these different ways of responding to that, knowing that every one of those should point back to this. Within the exchange itself, we have the ability to add an expiration date, especially pertinent when it comes to benefits, open enrollment, that type of information. We want that to expire on 12/31 of the upcoming year and then roll over in the following year on 1/1. The ability to control all of that is sort of where this is quickly highlighted. You can also see here anything that's expiring soon, currently expired, that this team, that that your internal subject matter experts need to go and manage. I also talked about, how we go and we manage any tickets, any I guess unanswered inquiries that somebody says, hey, this is not an adequate response. So I can jump into here and I'll showcase this in our internal instance. Rhonda and I were joking about hockey at the beginning, and I'll try to come up with something that stumps it, but I'll say, when will the NHL restart? So it's going to search for a match. I should be able to stump the system. So see, it's asking probably about restarting a computer. It's asking about parameters. I'm going to say none of the above because that didn't really point me in the direction of anything I'd like to see. I'm going to say here I need to file a ticket. Great, I can file a ticket. It's going to capture different additional information for me. Perfect. So it's filed a ticket for me, and I should be able to X out of this, refresh this, and see my ticket right here. I've got the email address, so this person will instantly be followed up with once the response is added to the knowledge base. If I wanted to connect it towards an already existing exchange, I could do that right here. I'm going to say, hopefully soon, so the Blues can win another Stanley Cup. Rhonda mentioned she was a Blues fan. I too am a Blues fan. I apologize if this is ruffling any feathers out there. Strictly meant for example's sake. I'll add that to my exchange, set no expiration date, and save that. So I show that this has been responded to. I should be able to copy this question, ask the platform again, and get the response. So again, the user is followed up with, it's added to the knowledge base so that anybody who asked that question is going to be given the same response. And so just wanted to quickly show how easy and simple that can be. So I'll jump back in here. Like I said, that concludes, and again, doing a time check, I wanted to leave plenty of time for Q&A. I'll go ahead and jump into some of the chat questions if that would be helpful. And Justin, like I said, if you feel better suited to answer any of these, feel free to interject as well. Let's see. Okay, so I got a question out there asking if we support different content by location and across different countries, i.e. different languages. So right now we're primarily focused on English, but we are very quickly on our roadmap. We're looking at initially the Latin-based languages and continuing to expand from there. So I would say it's on our roadmap for 2021, but TBD. Justin showcasing the email that I sent him, the calendar invite. And then I got a question from Amanda. It sounds like she's locking me up one. So implementation typically takes us around 30 days. And that gives us plenty of time to capture those key documents that I mentioned, be able to search through those and kind of really see the knowledge base, throw the kitchen sink at it. Kind of, like I said, test, turn it over to your team for additional testing, get everything squared away, and then we can go live. So 30 days, I would say, for our core product offerings. If there are some really unique integrations that require custom, build outs from our internal team, so on and so forth, it can extend, but 30 is probably a good number to kind of keep in mind. If there are any other questions, like I said, feel free to shoot those into the chat. Otherwise, like I said, I can turn it back over to Justin and Amanda, and really appreciate everybody's time. Hope everyone's staying safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Really appreciate it. And for all attendees, I was dumping some links in the chat to share the various resources I had mentioned. Before we go, I just want to let everyone know that I really am grateful for the time that you've given us today. I know that the world's a pretty crazy place right now. We're all dealing with it. I've got kids behind me working on schoolwork, and my wife is being a hero, working with them and keeping them quiet while we're trying to do this for you guys. So just on behalf of everyone here at Capacity, thank you so very much, and stay safe. And in the post webinar survey, feel free to ask us any additional questions. I can always be reached at justin.schmidt@capacity.com. I'm more than willing to help in any way I can during your evaluation of any AI products, whether it's ours or somebody else's. I've done a lot of research into this market, and happy to answer any questions, even if it's not about Capacity. So thank you so very much.
All right. Yeah. So thank you so much to Kyle and to Justin. Great presentation, folks. And we're so glad, like Justin said, that you can all be with us today in definitely a period of transition and change. And we hope that you all stay well. And thank you again. If you'd like to view the webcast again, it will be available on hr.com in the archives within within 24 hours. And your feedback is important to us and to the folks at Capacity. So please be sure to fill out the exit survey that is opened in a new browser on your computer. And yeah, I think that concludes. I just have one comment though. I'm not a St. Louis Blues fan there, Kyle. I said my brother was. So, but you are still, you and Capacity are still great friends of us at hr.com. We're having phenomenal time using Capacity with our coronavirus chat. So thanks again so much, everyone, and take care and enjoy the rest of your day.